Hey everyone, I'm Ann. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. You know what's wild? We live in a world where people can build rockets, filter their faces into another species, and make millions off content that has zero depth, but still have no idea how to feel. We've got people with sky-high IQs and kindergarten level EQs. Yeah, you might be a genius at business, but if you crumble when someone challenges you or shut down the second discomfort shows up, that's not emotional intelligence, that's emotional avoidance. Discomfort is what makes us human. It's the great equalizer. The problem is, most people run from it instead of learning from it. But if you can lean in, feel it, and get curious, that's where your emotional intelligence grows and where your authenticity is born. We keep trying to hack, numb, or manifest our way out of pain. But the truth is, the darkness is where the data lives. That ache, that jealousy, that frustration, that's your teacher, not your trigger. It's showing you where you still need to heal, where you're out of alignment, where you've been outsourcing your worth. Emotional intelligence isn't about being calm all the time. It's about being conscious in the storm. It's the ability to feel the chaos and still choose compassion. It's knowing your shadow isn't something to fix, it's something to understand. And when you start to see your darkness that way, as feedback, not failure, everything shifts. You stop fighting yourself and start learning from yourself. You stop performing and start being, because authenticity is the real flex. The world doesn't need more polished masks and curated highlight reels. It needs more humans willing to live raw, real, and on purpose. When you grow your EQ, you start owning your truth without apology. And suddenly, life doesn't just happen to you, it happens through you. So today, we're unpacking what emotional intelligence really looks like, how to build it, how to use the dark to find your light, and why living from that place of radical authenticity might just be the greatest revolution we've got left. Let's get naked. Today, I'm stripping it all off with Dr. Chad Scott. Dr. Scott is a licensed psychotherapist and author. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me here.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
coming to Arizona is so nice. It started snowing back home, and so I'm so happy to be here.
That's awesome. So Chad is from Minnesota for our listeners and came out to Arizona to be on the show and just so pleased that you made the trip.
Yeah, I
So
had to. And when you asked,
yeah,
yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll kind of dive in from your story in different pieces. We'll go
Sure,
off on little
sure,
rants, but maybe
sure.
you start and just give us the overview.
Yeah, I am from northern Minnesota, a little north of Duluth, a little south of the Canadian border. I am a mental health therapist. I've been in the mental health field since for 25 years, and also taught college half time at a university for gosh, I think 18 years or something like that total with all my teaching experience. Private pilot and a traveler. I have grew up traveling with my parents. We drove around all over the United States, and then when I got older, I started doing a lot of international traveling, and when I became single again, I started traveling by myself around the world. And from my experiences, I wrote a book.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me
And,
about
and I also had a liver transplant,
yeah,
that
God,
too,
you've been
yeah,
busy.
year and a half ago had a life-changing transplant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've been busy.
Yeah.
It's all part of your journey, right? And
Absolutely.
figuring out what your
Absolutely.
what your path is going to look like.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I'd like to kind of piggyback off of your introduction. Um, IQ, if you looked at all the successful people in the world, EQ, emotion, your emotion quotient is probably more important by far than your, just how much regular intelligence you have.
I couldn't agree
And
with you more.
yeah, and the nice thing about that is you're kind of born with your IQ.
Hmm.
You can change your EQ, you can build your EQ, and I think, you know, one of the ways you can do that is through dark tourism, which is kind of my topic.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that because for me, I spent the first 40 years of my life without dealing with my emotions. You know, my background was definitely I leaned way more into my masculine. Emotions looked messy. I
You're
didn't
not
want to
over
deal with them.
40.
Oh my God, God bless you. But that to me, like having this topic be what we're talking about today is so exciting
Yeah,
because it is my absolute favorite thing to develop. And I agree with you. I think
yeah,
your IQ is sure, you can play around with that a little bit, but where you really have some room to grow is your EQ. And
absolutely.
it's what makes the biggest difference.
Yeah,
Because, like I said in the intro, you know, you can have somebody that's this amazing business person, but if you challenge them and their ego can't handle
absolutely.
whatever that is, they react instead of respond, and then they risk all of the things that they built with their
100%.
IQ because of
100%.
their kindergarten level EQ, right?
Yeah.
So, what does that look like for you? Like, have you always been in tune with your emotions? Has that been something that you've kind of developed over the years? Tell me about your specific journey with your emotional intelligence.
Well, I would say, early on, I, I struggled in school. I,
Hmm.
I did very poorly. I never really tried. I was bored in school. Grew up actually really thinking I was dumb because I just never got good grades. And then I actually chased my girlfriend to college. Well, I went into the same college my
Sure, sure.
girlfriend went to, and I found my brain. I
Mhm.
found social sciences and just a love. I was going to go. I thought about like what's the easiest major I could go into, and I was going to go into to be a gym teacher. I figured like play floor hockey all day, and then I started taking social science classes. I'm like, I gotta change. This is great. So anthropology and psychology and those types of classes just changed my life. I was going to be a probation officer, and then in the middle of it, my son was born during my junior year of college, or yeah, between my junior and senior year. So I did my senior year distance in college, and I was hired at a mine, which was like, okay, that's about the best job you can get. I live on the Iron Range in Minnesota,
Mhm.
and um, and then the mine closes. So there's 2,000 people, and I just had bought this house, and but I got some money to go to college, and so I picked like, oh, what is something that I'm interested in, and I ended up getting a master's degree in counseling, and I just loved school, loved it so much. And during that time, my girlfriend found another guy, and
Mhm.
she left me, and now they're married, and good for them, and they have a
Mhm.
couple kids, and that's great. But yeah, that's where my life really started changing, and I started doing a lot more traveling and soul searching, and yeah, and ended up going to school and got a PhD.
Do you feel like your emotional intelligence has, like during that time when you were going to school for the major that you have and the master's,
Mhm.
did you really develop yours at that time, or were you just learning more about that in general, and then kind of the dark tourism stuff that you've gotten into? Did you develop more over that time, or where do you say like your emotional intelligence had the most growth?
Okay, so yeah, going kind of back to that question. So I wouldn't say I was emotionally intelligent then.
Hmm.
Um, so when me and my son's mom, we didn't get that. I mean, we were oil and water, and
Sure.
and we definitely didn't shouldn't have been together, for as long as we were. But we had a child, and we tried to make it work, and it just didn't work. But I really felt like at that time I had to prove myself to, and I think that was partially why I wanted to go on in school too. Is like how many times can you get called stupid, and you just you feel like you're not good enough,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I started pushing myself. And then after that relationship, I met a girl, and I was with her for about a year and a half, and things were, she was almost too nice and too sweet. And, looking back, maybe that was the person who should have, tried to make it work with. But we broke up just because, just the flames went out or whatever. Then I met the absolute love of my life. She was a social worker, and, um, and she was great. Like I was telling you earlier, I told her that I'd live in a cardboard box with her
Sure.
rather than a mansion with
Sure.
anybody else. She was great. And then I'm raising my son half time, and well, full time, but
For sure.
at him halftime.
For sure.
I was at his everything, and um, everything was great. My life, the chips just fell right into place. Everything is perfect. About 10 years go by. I'm married now to this girl,
Mm-hmm.
and I started developing a rash basically, and that rash became worse and worse and worse. And I went to the doctor, and it was vasculitis, and started becoming painful. And vasculitis is inflammation of your blood vessels, and then it just got excruciating. And they didn't know if it was a deadly type. And the deadly type, the treatment is chemotherapy for the rest of your life,
Right.
low dose chemotherapy, but for the rest of your life. Harold Ramis from the Ghostbusters died of that disorder. Um, and they, but it might be also a time limited type. They weren't sure because had some of the symptoms of the bad type, but there were some thoughts that maybe I didn't. So it's just kind of wait and see. And during that time, my dad was down here in Mesa, and he ended up getting sepsis, and they said literally it was a coin flip whether he would live or die. So me and my wife flew down here right away. Um, he survived, but I started getting a stomach ache. So I was back home in Minnesota now, waiting for them to get back because he was too. It affected his brain, so they weren't
Mhm.
able to get back. And his doctors were down here for that, so they stayed down here for a while. And I started getting a stomach ache during that time, and then I started passing blood,
Mhm.
and I had a colonoscopy, and they they said it was ulcerative colitis, but it ended up not being. But that's what I thought at the time. They treated it with steroids and some other meds, but coming off those steroids, and I was started drinking during that time too. And my dad was in the hospital, and uh, kind of hard, and especially when one night I was coming off those steroids, and I scared the shit out of my wife. I was ready to kind of take my own life that night. Um, it was a scary time, and that just and she was going through her own hard time those months before that. So she started kind of distancing when I was sick,
Mhm.
and I started chasing her after her, like, what's wrong, do you not love me, let's and I started
Yeah.
giving a lot of insecure statements, which I look back and I don't think it was insecure. I think it was just like, these are my needs.
Right.
Like, why are you turning away from me? But I think what attracted me to her in the first place was that she was an avoidant person.
Mhm.
She avoided her emotions, and we never fought. In 10 years, we never fought.
Mhm.
I shouldn't say never. I can count on my
Sure.
hand how many times we even had like disagreements that were more than, you know, everything was pretty minor.
Mhm.
And then she just left me. I mean, just almost without warning. After that night, I think I scared the shit out of her, and she just said, no more. And that was, yeah, that was it. And then I really started drinking hard. But I also started like, okay, I have a problem with anxiety. I didn't realize how bad my anxiety had been. I think I had anxiety all my life. I started going to therapy. I started doing all the things that I tell my clients to do, and I really, found out that, like, oh my God, I had this anxiety disorder my whole life, and it really got bad when I was going through my own illness. Like, I was worried about dying. I was worried. I mean, I had such a, I was, Woody Allen, he's got that anxiety, and that's kind of how I felt. It's like
Sure.
I all of a sudden turned into Woody Allen. Everything scared me. Everything,
Yeah.
am I gonna die? What's gonna happen to my kids? My parents are gonna. I mean, I just worried about everything.
Mhm.
And is this? I mean, to get a little graphic, I mean,
Yeah.
just to show how bad it was. I was driving, and all of a sudden, my testicles just got huge. I mean, and it's like painful. And like, do I go to the ER? What do I mean, just like,
Right.
I mean, that's how vasculitis was. It's like you would just have these, just the most random symptoms.
Yeah.
All of a sudden my eyes would be bloodshot, and all this. I remember, I'd go to meetings. I would look down. This happened a lot actually when I was in the bathroom. I'd look down and I'd just get a bloody nose. So I remember going to meetings, and I'd look down at my paper, and then just all of a sudden blood coming on my nose. I mean, it was awful. And it's like, how don't you be anxious in that? But
Sure.
also vasculitis itself, it's inflammatory. So it was really inflaming my brain too at the same time. They call them cytokines, and they get in your brain, and they inflame your brain just like they do your vasculitis is a immune disease where, it's a systemic, and it just makes everything get inflamed.
Yeah.
And that was inflaming my brain too. So I think that added to the anxiety. And I mean, just but the coming off steroids was the worst night of my life by far.
Well, and I think just you being just because you're in the therapist space doesn't mean that
Hmm.
you're not dealing with,
Oh,
all of the same
absolutely.
things. Like as you're talking about your journey, it's I'm thinking about it from a
Yeah.
standpoint of yes, you learn about all of these emotions, but you're still having to figure them out, not in a
Yeah.
classroom, but in real life
Yeah.
about when shit is presented to you in
Yeah.
life of a health scare, right? Pretty
Yeah.
significant health scare.
Yeah.
Health scare. You had to have your liver. Liver
Yeah.
transplant. That's
Well,
pretty
in
savage.
years when, I mean, the liver transplant came later, and which is
Sure.
kind of part of the story because I did so much work on myself during that time. The only thing I didn't do was quit drinking, but I didn't realize I had an underlying liver disorder either. I
Yeah.
mean, I just live in a hard drinking part of the country, and I
Yes.
mean that's just what we do,
The
especially
weather
on the Iron
sucks up
Range.
there, right? It's winter
Yeah,
and you just
yeah.
stay
We
inside and
drink our
drink.
beers, go in our
Sure.
saunas.
Yeah.
It's a, it's a kind
It's
of
a
a
great.
great lifestyle, but I didn't realize I had this underlying liver disease,
Mhm.
and the drinking was getting a little out of hand. But yeah, I was going to the doctor for stomach ache, and they said, "Well, I'll just go take omeprazole, take double the dose of the over counter." And
Mhm.
they went in a few times, and then I finally went into urgent care, and they said, "Well, your skin is kind of yellow." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" I mean, I quit drinking that day, and then well, then she had me see a surgeon, and then they gave me an ultrasound, and then I get a call. I'm at work. I mean, thinking nothing. I'm thinking like, oh, my gallbladder or something.
Sure.
I didn't think any like I never thought I had liver disease. I mean, the yellow it scared me enough to where I quit drinking, but I didn't think I really had like something like. But anyway, I get a call, and they said you have severe cirrhosis, and what your symptoms are end stage liver disease. And yeah, what
Was
a
it from the drinking or from an underlying something or just kind of a combination of the two?
it was a combination,
Yeah.
really. I mean, I would have needed a transplant at some
Sure.
point if I didn't drink, I think,
Yeah.
um, but it certainly sped it up.
It's wild to me to think about the drinking. I look at it from my specific
Mhm.
story and then talking to other people about theirs. It's something that's so normalized in our culture where we drink to celebrate. We drink when we're sad. We drink when we're, all of the different things. It's so normalized
Yeah.
that, for me, before I went to rehab, I was drinking every day and had been for years, heavy
Mhm.
drinking every
Mhm.
day.
Mhm.
And it wasn't out of the norm. It
Yep.
wasn't unacceptable. It
Yep.
wasn't like, oh my God, she's drinking all the time. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, she knows how to have a good time. She knows how to hold her
Yeah.
liquor.
Yeah.
I look back at that. There was no quality of life for me in that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't remember half of
Well,
it.
which is interesting is like, I'd have a few beers every day
Sure.
for many years, even
Mhm.
going before, and then after the, the divorce, I started drinking heavy. But yeah, I mean, I never missed a day of work. I never felt hungover at
Same.
work. You know, other than maybe when I was real young, I never drove drunk.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I didn't see it as a problem.
Mhm.
And then, you know, uh, but at the same time, it's like I still went every single day.
Of
I mean,
course.
there was that time when I had the vasculitis, I did stop just because I didn't know how that was affecting it.
Yeah.
Um, but I was surprised how once I did stop forever and kind of came to that mindset, like I'm never drinking again.
Mhm.
It's like life is. I mean, that I was really surprised on how better life is without alcohol. To be
Isn't that
honest,
wild?
yeah,
So I
yeah,
encourage people to do a pros and cons list about alcohol and what it brings to their life.
yeah.
Because for me, until I quit drinking, I hadn't really even thought about what would life look like if I didn't drink.
Hmm.
So to be able to look back 9 years, it's been 9 years for me, to be able to look back and say how much different and how much better my life is,
Yeah,
it's wild. I
yeah,
mean, it's almost mind boggling
yeah.
to me how much better my life is. And my life was good before I quit
Yeah.
drinking.
I
You
never
know,
would have I never would have wrote a book
yeah, of course.
without
I
drinking
mean, think about all
or
of the things.
quitting.
How many years has it been since you quit?
I think it's right around 4 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you said, think about how much better it is,
Yeah.
and you didn't even realize that was possible.
Right.
I know more people that have cirrhosis or other complications from alcohol, and when you start really looking at it, it's it's poison.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
basically poisoning yourself on a daily basis and then wondering why your body isn't performing or wondering why you have all of this suffering, but we cause all of our own suffering for
Yeah.
the shit that we do when we're drinking.
Yeah.
Think about how emotional intelligence ties in with drinking.
Oh, for
What a
sure.
joke.
For sure.
Like think about all the shit that you cause in your own life after you
Yeah.
have alcohol
Yeah.
in play.
Yeah.
That to me is pretty comical.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the dark tourism part because that's fascinating to me. Like
Yeah.
where did that spark for you or where did that kind of start and what did you learn about yourself during that?
Yeah. I mean, going back, traveling with my parents, we stopped at historical things. And I think that's probably where it started, maybe. And
The ages.
the only classes I got A's in like high school was history and,
Mm,
like those types of things is like I was super interested in, but everything else, if it didn't interest me, I didn't pay attention.
yeah,
I daydreamed, you
sure.
know, and I still do that, but now now I know what I'm interested in. So I
Stay
focus.
plugged
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. But, so the first time I really, think of dark tourism and I start off my first chapter with this story is we were at Sloppy Joe's bar in Key West, Florida, and which is where Ernest Hemingway's favorite bar. And this guy with a straw hat and flip flops, he was a local, came over and he was just talking to us. And we were saying, "This is our first night in town." And he's like, "You should check out the Key West Cemetery. It's really quirky. And, they have chickens roaming around in the above ground too, and people really like it." I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. Well, you go to a cemetery as a tourism spot." So we did. And sure enough, it was, there were the chickens in the above ground tombs, and they had these quirky sayings like "devoted fan of Julio Iglesias," and "see, I told you I was sick," and then there's a guy with had a picture of him with his shirt off, flexing his muscles, and it's just weird, but it was really interesting, and it was, I think that sparked an interest in going to places like that. So then every time we went somewhere, and I was with my wife at the time, so we would go to places that were kind of dark.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot like the Paris catacombs, we had went to there, and we had gone to like the Colosseum, and I mean just in cemeteries almost everywhere we went, and it was just something that got in my blood. And then after the divorce, I started seeking out those places by myself, and I still didn't realize it was dark tourism. I just thought like, oh, this is my interest in history. And then also I started getting more, as I got probably more emotionally intelligent too, I started really reflecting on the people that were suffering or that had suffered in some of these places I had gone to. Um, and, uh, and it really started giving me these reflections of myself, which I didn't really realize was happening, but had gone to Auschwitz and Berlin. They have, I mean, dark tourism in Berlin is unbelievable. um, reflecting and when you go in with like a lot of reverence and a lot of empathy, which I always did when I went to those places, if you go in, it's some people say, why would you go to places like that? But I think when you go in sort of with that reverence and try to empathize with the suffering there rather than treating it just like a museum where you just like read what's there and
Right.
just walk through. Like if you go to Auschwitz, for example, I mean, you can go there and just hear the story and leave.
Mhm.
Or you can go there and really try and reflect on the suffering, and it changes your life. I actually start out my introduction to the book walking down into the gas chamber at Auschwitz. There's still one that's still there. And my tour group had moved ahead, and they seemed to go through it almost too quick. It's like, this place is just profound. And so I stood in that gas chamber by myself, and, seeing, you could envision people dropping one by one, and
Mhm.
like women, children,
Mhm.
and scratches in the wall, and you see the where the canisters drop, and in that moment my life changed forever. And then you walk into the next room and you see the ovens. They call them ovens, they're furnaces,
Mhm.
but they have the rails going to them, and it's like the industrial you know size of what the Holocaust. I mean, you knew that, but when you go to these places, and
Yeah.
this is where it's different. I knew all this stuff, but when you go to those places, you feel that stuff,
Right.
and when you feel it, it etches into a different place in your brain. So you were alive, I'm sure, when do you remember where you were when the Challenger crashed?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and people remember where they were when if they were alive when Kennedy was shot,
Right. Or
and
nine
in
11 or
9/11,
right.
exactly. And those types of events etch in a different part of your brain. They're in the limbic system where the hippocampus and the amygdala. I mean, it's those it etches in there, and they're not like regular memories. So when you are going through your own darkness, going to those places, it's kind of like they gift you. You know,
Yeah.
you feel like those people didn't die in vain.
Hmm.
And you know, when you go there and you honor them and you reflect and you when you don't when and I feel like when I went through my own dark time with uh, my liver disease, for example, I had 9 months where I thought I had liver cancer. They said, you know, and that has a 5% survival rate. And I had this liquid biopsy, and it was the same people that do Cologuard, but it was a false positive. And I also had a little lump, and they said, well, if those two combined, you have liver cancer. And ended up being a false positive 9 months later, but at 9 months. But anyway, I had no fear with all that stuff. And so I failed miserably when I had this vasculitis. I guess this is the point I'm getting at. So I failed miserably.
I want to stop you for just a
Yeah.
quick second and say, you are really challenging me today. And I appreciate that,
Yeah.
because you told me before we started recording, I'm going to go down these rabbit holes. And I'm like, okay, I want to ask this follow-up question. And then you go, and then you go, and then you go, and then you go. And then I'm like, fuck, I don't even know where we are anymore, which is excellent. But I just
Yeah.
want to say, like, if I have to pause
Yeah.
to ask the next
Yeah.
question, that's where I am.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. So going to those places, getting those reflections, when I went through my own darkness, it came back to really help me go through my darkness.
Yeah.
Long story short.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you go and you talk about those places and other people that just walk through them,
Mhm.
as opposed to you going in there and like feeling them,
Yeah.
right? It's like it gives you an alternative perspective
Yeah.
to what you're doing. And I think that that is where the impact comes
Yeah.
in, because you can't even get your head around, like, holy shit, think about that happening. And it wasn't that long ago,
Right.
right? Think about how long ago that was. Not that long ago, where really horrible, terrible things. I mean,
Yeah.
they happen every
I
single
think
day. But
Auschwitz is 80 years, but my grandpa fought in the war,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
That's a one lifetime
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
But being able to get that alternative perspective and kind of feel what that must feel like to have, be separated from your family, to be, um, you know, literally just executed. It's terrible. Energy is everything, and most of us are spending it like drunk gamblers at a Vegas blackjack table. My book is built around one simple but powerful tool: quantifying your energy so you know exactly where it's going and how to get more of it back. Think of it as a manual for your soul's fuel tank. If you're tired of running on empty, this book will show you how to fill back up and keep yourself in the game long enough to actually win. Get your copy of the Life Hack Playbook on Amazon or on the podcast website, letsgetnakedpodcast.com. Do you feel like during that dark tourism time that your emotional intelligence for yourself, not only just learning the history, was that a big part of your growth as it related to that, just being able to kind of empathize or feel all of that?
So much so I wrote a book about it. Yeah. So it's a travel
Yes.
memoir going through all these dark places. There's about 70 places I go to throughout the world.
Uh-huh.
But that's really what it's about, is how it's about those places, but how those places came back and unexpectedly helped me.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So I was in Oslo, and I was actually in Oslo in part. I went to a cemetery, but it was my great grandparents. You know, I found their grave in near Oslo, but I started getting sick during that time. So I had liver disease, but I was kind of well enough to go travel by myself. But I started feeling really sick, so I stayed in my hotel room. I came back. I didn't know I didn't know it was my liver necessarily. Thought it could be, but came back, and my blood work was just off the charts, and I was on the transplant list a month later. And about 5 weeks after that, I was actually given a transplant. But when I was in Oslo, I read a National Geographic article about dark tourism. So I really never even heard of dark tourism. There's a National Geographic thing, or a Netflix series on dark tourism, and
Okay.
I think it's called The Dark Tourist. But it's kind of sensationalized, and it wasn't like what I did in dark tourism
Wasn't your
necessarily. It wasn't,
experience,
yeah.
yeah.
But this article I read, it was by a guy named Dr. Philip Stone. He was the director of the Institute of Dark Tourism Research in the UK, and he's also probably the leading academic in dark tourism. But anyway, I found out that it's an academic term, dark tourism. It was termed in the 1990s by researchers. So that's the term that they use for research. So anyway, I get my transplant, I'm out in Hollywood actually to basically to recover because I was in Minnesota and it was crappy weather. So I felt myself backsliding after I had surgery. So I go out to California. So I went to the Queen Mary, which has this haunted reputation. I wanted to go to it, and I'm just interested in those places. But 2 days in a row, I was in celebrity cemeteries, and the second day, I'm like, why am I always in these places? And then my brain connected to that article, and then I'm thinking, like, these places really have helped me, and that's where it really just kind of the subconscious became conscious, and it's like
Mhm.
these places really helped me, and that's when I decided to write a book. I finally had all this energy. I didn't realize how many years I probably have been sick for 10 years with the liver disease, and I didn't know it. That the doctors thought, like, how did your regular doctors not
Catch
see
Yeah, how
this?
did they not catch it?
But then I go to a specialist at the University of Minnesota, and they're like, yeah, this is just bad. And that Dr. Philip Stone, I put out a concise edition of this book
Mhm.
just to see if people are interested. Just I wanted to get my story out there as fast as I could.
Sure.
Like
Excited about it?
yeah,
It's fun.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I put out a concise edition of the book. This Dr. Philip Stone read it, contacted me, said he loved it, and he actually wrote the foreword to this book.
I
Yeah,
love
we
that.
developed a friendship, and yeah.
When you're jazzed up about what you're doing,
Mhm.
it really just adds a whole nother layer because
Yeah,
it feeds your soul what you're putting
absolutely.
out there, and then it helps so many other people.
Right.
I had never heard of dark tourism,
Mhm.
but it makes perfect sense to me because I
Mhm.
think when I think about things that other people go through, for
Mhm.
me in not dealing with my emotions and then more recently dealing, in the last 8 or 9 years, really developing my emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
being able to look at that. And for me, I put myself in other people's shoes, which I never did before, right? That whole like
Mhm.
different perspective and saying, like, what does that feel like if I were sitting in your seat instead of sitting in mine? When you're able to do that, it really helps you improve your emotional intelligence because it's like, fuck, what would that be like? To do that. My kids have helped me with that a lot, where it's like, and probably your kid has done the
Yeah.
same for you,
Yeah.
where, if people had kids that were sick or had, whatever their story is, being able to say, oh shit, that's wild. And to be able to feel from someone else, I think
Yeah.
it helps with the empathy, with the compassion. I never
Mhm.
had a lot of compassion until the more recently,
Yeah.
where I realized I have to have compassion for myself first
Right.
before you're able to have compassion
Yeah.
for other people.
Yeah.
That's a huge key when people, are trying to work on something for how they interact with other people. Look at your relationship with that for yourself first.
Sure.
Did you find that when you went to these different places that it mirrored things back to you? Or
Well,
what do you
and
feel about the whole mirror
yeah,
concept?
so in my introduction, I talk about so when you go to these places with reverence and empathy, a
Yes,
mirror emerges,
yes.
and you see little pieces of yourself. You're not going in there to compare your life to theirs. Like
Right.
I wouldn't say I compare my life to somebody that went to Auschwitz. I
Sure.
talk a lot about how I got called for a transplant. And I had to wait for the liver. The person was in St. Louis, and I'm back in Minnesota, and we're really waiting for this person to die
Wow.
to get his liver. And the doctor wanted to do another test, and we're on like day 2 of this going on, and I'm in the hospital this whole time because we're just like
Right,
waiting
you're
for
just
it.
waiting.
So they wanted to do another test, and the family said no. And the doctor, I get a call at midnight from the doctor saying, I turned down your liver. And it's like, boom. The only
Oh
craving
my
I ever had
god.
for alcohol, really,
That's
after I
sad.
quit, was that. I mean, where I like really like give me a beer right now.
Yeah, that's
That was the
savage.
only time. But um, it was awful, but I started reflect and again, I didn't do it on purpose. I think when you go to these places too, you sort of you almost think in terms of history. Like, so I thought back to Normandy, and the people that were gonna storm the beaches, they had a delay of a day, and so they knew that they're gonna go, and at that time, my livers were or my lungs were the sac around my lungs were filling up with fluid. I could hardly breathe. I
Oh,
was so itchy. I felt so sick. I mean, I felt like I was going to die,
yeah.
and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. And I thought back to them and their anxiety and
Mhm.
probably like excitement even about like just let us fight and
Yeah.
the some pride. So I saw parallels. Again, I'm not comparing, but it just you get when you go to those places, you that little mirror,
Mhm.
and it comes back at the most unexpected times. And their mission was to get to the beach and fight on, and my mission was get to the transplant and fight on. So when you go through your own darkness, and you have those reflections, you don't feel so alone in your suffering.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true. I think a lot of people in society just don't even realize the whole mirror concept.
Yeah.
Will you explain that a little bit in doctor terms a little bit so that people can kind of understand what that concept is?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can put it in doctor terms, but I can put it in
Whatever. Better
so,
than I
yeah,
can.
so when you go into when you empathize with anybody,
Yeah.
you start you I mean, empathy is being able to kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Hmm.
Sympathy is, "Oh, I feel sorry for you,"
Right.
or, "I understand why you're upset," but empathy is really just fully trying to absorb their story as much as humanly possible without actually being in their shoes. And when you do that, it affects your own emotions and you become more emotionally intelligent when you truly empathize. So people that can't empathize, they're much more capable of hurting other people, not even necessarily or intentionally.
Sure.
Um, but when you lack empathy, you're that's you lack emotional intelligence.
Yeah. I spent a lot of years of my life in that bucket, unfortunately. And I look back and I think that's kind of sad. It is
I
what it
mean,
is. It's part of my journey and
exactly.
whatever. But
Well, and
it's
that's
like,
exactly true. I mean, everybody has their story, and eh, my favorite story is a redemption story. You know, when you've gone through shit, when you've gone through hell, they talk about, Jesus had to go to hell before he went to heaven. And,
mhm,
and there's all kinds of story. I think Dante's Inferno is like that too. And I mean, there's all kinds of stories where people, um, Hurricane Carter, the boxer, he was, um, convicted of murder and he didn't do it. And he went to prison. He said, I'm not going to, I can't remember the exact quote, but he went to prison for like 20 years, but he said, they can make me a prisoner, but I'm not in a prison because, of the way he thinks,
mhm,
like I'm always free in my brain.
yeah,
And he ended up proving that he was innocent. Nelson Mandela, the same thing.
yeah,
He's like, I'm not a prisoner. It's you're only a prisoner if you think you are.
yeah.
Bob
It's your
Marley, the
mindset.
Redemption Song.
Sure, sure.
It's my favorite song because, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Nothing but yourself is going to free your mind.
Yeah. People don't realize, right? Like there's so much. This is what unlocks your mind, is
Mhm.
what unlocks everything for you. So many people think things have to be a certain type of way in order for them to be happy or in order for them to find peace. And it's like, that's actually not how it is at all. You know, what does your practice look like? What do you do? What does your regular day look like? Do you see patients? Like what does
Yeah.
today look like for you?
Today I'm sitting on the couch
Well,
with you. No,
what,
but my regular day is, I have a little private practice
mm-hmm,
in Aurora, Minnesota, and I'm a generalist. I see just about everybody for anything, and
sure.
if it's too complex, I'll send them to a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like your typical generalist. I see kids down to age 6, and I see as old as they want to come. So
What is your favorite area that really gets you jacked up? Like for me, I have certain things that really excite me,
yeah,
right? Do you have a specific area of your practice that's like, oh, I love to work with people that are dealing with?
I have 2.
Okay.
So, I mean, I love all my
Yeah, yeah,
people.
yeah.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I
Right.
love it all. But if I had to pick, like, what are my absolute favorites? So, when I first got into the field, I really had an interest in criminal psychology. I wrote a book on the criminalization of mental illness back in 2007, I think.
Okay.
And so I worked in community mental health and I saw a lot of people that were in the criminal justice system. I'm like, these are not the criminals I studied. These are people that are just have mental illness
Sure.
and end up in the criminal justice system because of their symptoms or, because of their poverty. They might, steal or they are doing drugs to live in an alternate, you know, not an alternate universe, but, you know,
Alternate reality.
alternate reality.
Sure.
Thank you. And um and they end up in prison. So I ended up spending a lot of time working with those types of people, and I got to the point, I got so good at it that like I wasn't offered any jobs, but um like I was told to apply for some warden positions, like the superintendent of these jails,
Wow.
and I was runner up, but
Sure.
But yeah, it was like
But that's exciting.
humbling to get those types of interviews
Right.
to, you know,
Well, and that's exciting too, because I think a lot of people think, oh, the people that are in the criminal
yeah,
system of prisons and whatever, they belong there, whatever. But when you really start diving into that,
yeah.
you see
Oh yeah.
everything that just the human aspect of
Such a
that.
small percentage that are truly bad people,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
you're absolutely right. It's people like, you were talking about listening to the episode with
Yeah,
Carlos and Peter.
yeah, he's a great
Those two guys, wow.
yeah,
Wow. And to listen to their stories of, you know, Carlos and his dad, leaving when he was 12 years old, and what does that look like, and all of the things, like he's still a little boy in going off to maximum security prison,
yeah.
and think about that survival mode that will kick in, that
Oh,
just
yeah.
forces you to be that badass so that you don't get
Prisons make
fucked with.
better criminals
Yeah,
is what they do.
that's
I mean,
exactly what
there's
it
a
is.
reason they call it con college.
Yeah, that's and you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
And there's still that 8-year-old boy underneath there that's just in pain, in fear, and all of the things that has to muster up, um, this bravado and this manhood to be able to just not continue to be fucking traumatized,
right.
by other human beings that are just also broken.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
what was number two then? So criminal aspect
Yeah,
was one.
criminal yeah, I definitely have spent a lot of time in that. But, I would say college age kids.
Okay.
I think they're in that, am I a kid? Am I an adult? And it just seems like such an influential age to do counseling
Yeah.
because they really want help so bad. They wanna change these habits that they've learned maybe from their parents
Sure.
or just, and they don't want the life that they have, or they had a ton of anxiety. I mean, and it's just such an influential age. I think that's what it boils down
Yeah.
to.
Well, and giving them the tools to really to be able to understand that
Mhm.
they have the power to do whatever it is that they want.
Yeah.
I think a lot of our youth don't realize that, or don't realize um, how to implement that,
Yeah.
how to use the different tools to kind of write their own story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I was that age, and maybe this is part of it, is when I was that age, something tragic happened. And not to me, but to somebody that I cared about. And I vicariously developed PTSD. It was a sexual assault.
Hmm.
And um, without a doubt, looking back, I had PTSD
Yeah.
from the details. And I even, this person didn't want to report it to the police. And I called the police chief and I said, this person was sexually assaulted. You need to do something about it. And they said, well, if she doesn't report it, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I mean, it was awful. And
It's wild to hear you tell that story, and we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording, but for you as a man to kind of feel that for her,
yeah.
right? I don't think I've ever spoken with anyone about that at that level, and
Hmm.
it's fascinating to me because I think a lot of men can't kind of envision what that's like. Like I've
Oh,
I've talked to my husband as an example about the fact that the majority of the women that I have in my life have been sexually assaulted at some point, if
yeah.
not multiple times over
Yeah.
the course of their lives. And he can't even get his head around it. It's
Yeah.
like, how is that even possible? And it's like, it happens all the time. So
Yeah.
for you to be able to kind of plug in such a intimate way with someone that had been sexually assaulted and
Yeah.
almost like feel that, and really want justice for her, but then
Yeah.
understand that she wasn't going to
Yeah,
pursue
I had a
that.
black and white. I mean, I almost I wasn't I couldn't imagine how she felt,
Sure.
but but she wouldn't call it what it was, and it
Yeah.
was rape.
Yeah.
And I just I struggled with that.
Yeah. Well, women have such a complex relationship with sexual trauma because depending on what age we are,
Yeah,
depending on what our upbringing is, right? There's a lot of shame around it,
yeah,
So for me, having issues with being molested by friends as older brothers or whatever that looked like potentially growing up, you don't say anything, right? There's shame around that. That's not something that we were raised by our moms or our aunties to say, you come to me if something happens, or you use your voice and you say no at full volume.
yeah,
But we've definitely learned from that, and
yeah,
or at least, for those women that are in my circle, have learned from that and teach our young girls, you say no at
yeah,
full volume. And
yeah,
if you're a listener out there that has not had that conversation with young nieces or young daughters, or obviously with consent from their parents, but that needs to be a conversation that's had with young girls, because in the situation that you're talking about, she didn't feel like she had a voice. Or if you're from a small town, potentially, the kind of the ramifications for maybe saying something. There's a lot of different things that go into it for women, where it isn't just black and white or cut and dry of, oh, this happened, let's make it right. There's a bunch of shit that goes into that really is, to me, I think worse than the actual act of it happening
Yeah.
is the mental stuff that kind of goes around it. And then
Oh,
how do
without a
you,
doubt,
yeah,
yeah.
and then how do you
There's
navigate
so much
that? It
shame
is.
that people have,
It is.
especially when people are assaulted when they're, you know, especially when it's rape when you're young, when
Yes.
you're a child, you're given that narrative like sex is only between a man and a woman,
Yeah.
or a husband and
Yeah,
wife, and
sure.
after you're married, and especially growing up Catholic, I mean
Oh,
that
God.
was completely what our narrative was.
You grew up Catholic as well? Okay.
Yeah,
Welcome.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I still love the Catholic Church, but
Good.
yeah, you have that Catholic guilt,
Yeah.
but even if you don't have the Catholic guilt, I mean, that's the narrative is you should wait to have sex,
Are you
and when
still
you're
plugged into
raped, not really,
that?
but
Okay.
I
To me, I almost can't get my head around it, but please keep going.
right.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Well,
when
I'll
you're
tell you
right.
what. Part of one of the chapters in here, I write about going to Jerusalem. It's like I really got away from the church for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one of those rabbit holes.
Yeah.
I got away from the church for a long time. And when I had liver disease and I didn't know, necessarily what was going to happen, I'm like, well, God, I better find religion pretty fucking quick.
Yeah.
So I went to Jerusalem. I just went to Jerusalem, and um, but going to Jerusalem, like, holy shit, this is just like going to a dark tourism spot.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. You get that Philip Stone that I was talking about. He sent me a book on how dark tourism and religious pilgrimages go hand in hand, and
Mm-hmm.
they're very similar. And I hadn't read that book until he read my chapter on that, and that's why I'm guessing why he sent it. But yeah, there's a lot of overlap. So when you go to dark tourism spots, they're hallowed ground. You get a lot of those same feelings, and that I did when I went to Jerusalem. But also then thinking about it, it's like you're going there to reflect and honor Christ who suffered, and they have all the different stations, and then his tomb. It's like, okay, I mean, that's basically what you do when you go to dark tourism places,
Yeah.
and then all the conflict and shit that's gone on there too. I mean,
What are you more spiritual than religious, or more religious than spiritual, or what does that look like?
here's another interesting rabbit hole
Yeah.
too.
I love the
So
rabbit holes.
my lifelong dream has to go to Africa. I just got back from 2 weeks in Kenya and Tanzania. We went
Good for
tenting,
you.
set up tents every night and go. It was as amazing as you would think it is, and more.
Yeah.
But one day we stopped and took a bathroom break, and there's these two giant skeleton, kind of a monument.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, that's weird. And I see a Voldy Gorge. So it was like 2 days after Jane Goodall died. And I'm like, holy shit, this is what Jane Goodall wrote about. So um, she grew up loving Tarzan. So she wanted to go to Africa. And how she got to Africa, she attached to Louis Leakey, who is this very famous anthropologist who dug up, early humans. Um, he was his secretary. So she was there when she was really young. She was his secretary. And he saw in her that, like, man, you have a really good scientific type mind and research orientated mind. And he sent her to Gombe, where she studied the chimpanzees and redefined the humans. And getting back to my story about that. So rabbit hole. So my story is that I noticed that, and um, she really influenced the way I look at spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a Lutheran, and she believed that everybody, probably prays to the same God. I may be a little getting her. I'm paraphrasing, but
Sure. Sure.
everybody prays to the same God. So the way I look at religion is, no matter what religion you are, no matter whether it's indigenous or Jewish, Catholic, Buddhist, whatever,
Sure.
it's so big that too big for us to know. Everybody, so it's like every religion is a compass, but they all point to magnetic north, which is God or gods,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think spirituality is like the umbrella, right?
Yeah.
Whether you call your higher power God or source or universe or whatever that looks
Yes.
like. For me, I look at it as, religion is more of the man-made component of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to me, they're rooted in fear, which I think, for anyone who's ever heard my show understands what my position on religion is. This is not a surprise. I think that's bullshit. I really do. And so when I hear that you're Catholic and that you say, I still love the Catholic Church, it almost goes like, "What?" Which is great because we're all different and we all get to do our own thing, right? I was also raised Catholic and I couldn't be further away from that if I tried. But I also don't understand people who come from a
I
religious
even
place.
so I got my tattoo. It's the oldest tattoo shop in the world
Uh-huh.
is in Jerusalem. But anyway, I don't go to church.
Sure, sure.
I
No, I want you to
like
do whatever you
I
want to do, whatever makes your heart
Oh,
happy.
so I think part of my story too, and I write this in the book, is
Mhm.
I don't know. And actually, last night I was at doing ghost tourism. I was like was riding down downtown Mesa on these carts that you know. Oh, I'd have to show you the picture to even explain it. But you're riding around getting a ghost story on these
That's fun.
weird little cart things. Yeah,
That's fun.
yeah. And then the day before, I was in cemetery. I went to Waylon Jennings' grave and made a little video on that. And so anyway, the hell was I getting at? I got so far off my
Your
topic
rabbit
again.
holes are excellent. Like, I don't ever want you to think that I'm coming from a bad place when I say that. Like, they're excellent, but it's challenging me as the host of the show to be like, okay,
I
where is it going?
apologize.
Because no. There's no apology. That's the fun of this. That's the fun of this
What
show.
were we
Is there's
talking about before that? Do we
Well, we
need to
were talking
rewind it?
about religion because I was just again, I'm always surprised when people are religious. Not from a bad place, but it's just I think religion brings a lot of great things. I think it brings community and, generally speaking, people that are religious are
Yeah,
good people who want to do the right
yeah,
thing, right? They take care
yeah,
of their neighbor, that whole vibe. I just think the other side of that coin where it's really rooted in fear.
yeah,
And it's like, to me, I don't believe in a God that thinks that you have to be on the right spot when your time is up or you're wrong, right? Like religion to me is very much like if I'm Mormon and you're Catholic, I'm telling you that my God is right and your God is
yeah,
wrong and you're going to burn in hell. I just think that that's
yeah,
bullshit, right? And so it's like
yeah,
if you think about that from an 8-year-old's perspective, which I always say is like the bare bones without all of the filters and the bullshit, it's like you pray to a God that thinks that if you're gay, you're going to go to hell. Like,
I don't believe in that shit. I mean,
I know you don't, but I'm
I
just saying religion
yeah,
in general,
yeah,
right? Comes
yeah.
from that place of I'm right, you're wrong, and I
Hmm.
just don't believe that. I think we're all children of God, and I think we're all meant to take care of one another. I think we're all connected, and I think anything that divides us or makes
No, I
you,
went on a date with a girl a few months ago,
yeah,
and she said, "Well, I don't like Pope Francis." It was just before he died.
sure,
I don't like Pope Francis because I don't believe in his politics. I'm like, well, there you're gone.
right,
It's like, yeah, I mean, how nuts? I mean,
sure,
like conservative Christianity right now, I think is completely insane.
mm-hmm.
But getting back to my story, I remember my
All
story.
right,
So
come on back.
I was at the Vatican, and it was just after Pope Francis got elected. Um, so this is so stupid, but they say you're protected for 3 months, and so I got blessed by the Pope, listened to him talk, was back home, and it was really foggy. It was like as foggy as it gets where I live, and I was going to work, and of course I'm not going to get up and go to work early, so I'm going at my regular time. I'm like, oh shit, so I was going too fast for the conditions. I've never in my life heard a voice in my head.
Mm.
I heard a voice in my head. It says, Chad, slow down. A car's coming at you. Within 20, and I did. I slowed down. I'm like, what the
Yes, you
fuck?
listen. Yep.
I immediately thought of that Vatican and God and like,
Mm-hmm.
was that Jesus? Was that? I mean, holy shit. I mean, I was like freaked out.
Yeah,
20 seconds later, no shit. I mean, a car, and I'm going like half the speed I was going. There's a car right in my lane, just and I
barely.
reacted so fast and was so ready for it. And they pulled over. I pulled over. Car, I think it was behind them or behind me. I mean, no, it had been behind them because on the other side of the road. And we just looked at each other. And usually I'd be like, "You fucking idiot! You what the fuck?"
Sure.
Just like peace. And it's like, oh my
Yes.
god, that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just drove off.
Yeah. Isn't that such a beautiful
Yeah,
example of
yeah,
emotional intelligence?
yeah.
To bring it all back full circle, right?
Yeah, and that's where with the ghost tourism, it's like I don't know if I believe or not in
Yeah.
that stuff. I mean, but I just like what if, and that's why I like, and I love the stories and the
Yeah.
lore, but that was the closest that I've ever had to anything like supernatural happen to me. So it's like, there is something more out there. There has
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah. No, I definitely believe all of that stuff. I think not anything specifically. I just think everything is possible,
Yeah.
and I don't come from this place where I put myself in a box mentally
Yeah.
by I only believe these things because this is what this religion is. And I think that that's
Mhm.
part of my biggest complaint about just not even religion, but just groups in general. It's like I
Mhm.
think it's very closed-minded to think that your belief system is the only way,
Yeah.
especially in things where it's like we're supposed to be dividing.
Yeah.
There's things that we divide ourselves, humanity on, whether it's religion or race or politics or any of those things where I just think, I don't think that's the way. I
Yeah.
think human connection is what we're meant to be
Yeah.
doing. And, if you come from a group that says somebody else is wrong because they do something differently that maybe you don't understand, I encourage you to get curious
You know what
about
kind
that.
of pushed me out of the Catholic Church
Tell me.
is
Because here's where my head goes. I'm
so
going to
okay.
tell you that.
Okay.
Okay.
So I was at a wedding, my best friend's wedding, and the priest was there, and I hadn't gone to church in a long time. He's like,
Mhm.
Chad, why don't you come see me one night? I'm like, oh, fine, I'll tell him what I think about religion.
Sure.
And I basically kind of had the same thoughts about religion as what I was expressing. And I'm like, I would feel holy going to Buddhist, wherever, like any type of service, I would feel just as holy as I would in a Catholic church. And I think we all pray, I tell him we all pray the same.
Sure.
And he's like, that's fine, but you can't go there and pray, you know. And at the time too, I was with my son's mom, and we were engaged, and we were going to get married, and we wanted to do it outside. And he's like, no, you need to be married in a church because whatever
Certain
reason,
rules. Yeah.
And I'm like, what's more holy than being married in? I think at that time we were looking at Hawaii or something, and like, what's more religious than being married in something beautiful that God created,
Mhm.
and and he just didn't agree with me. I'm like, well,
So many
this isn't for
rules.
me. So
Yeah.
that's kind of when I strayed from the
Yeah.
church. So he was
Well,
trying to get me to come back, and he actually pushed me farther away.
right. Well, religion is a lot of rules.
Yeah.
And to me, I say fuck rules,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Certain rules.
to me, I say fuck all rules. I mean, that's
The only rule the rule I really like about religion that I think everybody forgets, not everybody, a lot of people forgets, especially I think the conservative Christians. I'm sure this
yeah.
isn't,
No, you say whatever you want.
but
Chad, you can say whatever
but
you want.
love thy neighbor, man.
Yeah.
You know,
All of us.
uh,
Every one of us.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Not with an asterisk at the end of it.
exactly.
Right? That's the human
Treat
connection.
a foreigner as you would treat a
Thousand,
relative. I
thousand
mean,
percent.
it's something like, I'm paraphrasing again, but there's
Sure,
something like
sure.
that in the Bible.
No, I think if we all got to that and kind of let all of this bullshit that divides us get out of the way,
Yeah,
I think we'd all be really surprised
yeah.
because we all are connected.
Actually, there's a guy that you had on your
Tell
podcast,
me.
same last name, different and not related, but Gary Scott. And Gary Scott, he's from California, but I don't think it's come out yet, maybe,
Okay.
but um, he's a conservative and I'm a liberal, but
Uh-huh.
we have these really nice, respectful conversations. I mean,
Sure. No, we should be
I don't
able
know.
we should be able to have
Yeah,
conversations. You could be
yeah,
different than me and we can have conversations.
but if I mention something, like I put Minneapolis had a shooting at the Assumption Church
Mhm.
school,
Mhm.
church school, and I had posted something on Facebook, and that was like my most commented on post, and it was like, you fucking idiot, you liberal dumbass,
Yeah.
it was like 500 comments of that kind of stuff, and it's like,
It's wild.
yeah,
Isn't it wild that
yeah,
people think that that's okay?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you can have your beliefs and you can believe whatever you want, and it's literally the least important thing to me. It's funny because I have friends that are liberals, and I personally don't get involved in politics because I couldn't give a shit less. I
Hmm.
think it's all a joke.
Hmm.
That's just my personal
Hmm.
opinion, and I get to have that as well. But I can sit and have conversations with the whole spectrum of people,
Absolutely.
and listening to other people's perspectives helps stretch my mind in a way where I can open my mind, and maybe I still stay with whatever it was that I came
Right.
into that believing, or maybe you change my mind because I have new facts or a new perspective. And
Mhm.
that's my absolute favorite. And I
Yeah,
think if more people leaned into that and got curious about things instead of feeling like my way is the only way and this is
absolutely,
how we're going to believe, it's like, no, like
absolutely.
when you talk about things that where we differ on opinions, it's like, tell me why you believe that. And
Yeah,
I'm not going to be sitting here coming up with whatever my rebuttal is. I'm going
yep,
to be listening to you
yep,
with as much passion as I want to be heard,
yep,
because that's how we have open dialogue and conversations. And
yep,
I just love that.
yeah.
So Well,
Yeah, it's kind of the 2 ears, 1 mouth thing,
it is, right?
Yeah,
And more of us should lean into that, you know?
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
well, thank you so much for taking time to come
Yeah,
and chat with me today. So, I'm going to hold up Dr. Chad Scott's Beyond the Darkness book. This is his most recent one. Please check it out. Dark tourism, very exciting to
yeah,
learn about all of that. I can't wait to read it. So,
yeah, it's
um,
as much of a self-help book as it is about darkness.
yeah,
You know,
and how you all the things you learned.
last thing I wanna make
Sure.
is most people default to their comfort zones
Yes.
when they go through a hard time,
Mm-hmm.
when they go through assaults, when they go whatever
Sure.
it is, a divorce. I mean, you default to your comfort zone. And people need to really try to go, instead of that, step out of that comfort zone and go through that reckoning phase. And it's hard, and sometimes it's going to therapy. They'll help you. I mean, I have people coming to me, but that making that first step can be very hard, and just stepping outside your comfort zone is hard. But comfort zones, if you think about it, they get smaller and smaller over time, and pretty soon you're not living your life anymore.
Yeah.
And the only thing that grows in a comfort zone after a while is depression and anxiety and shitty things. And if you go through that other path, it's hard. You don't want to talk about those things. You might want to avoid everything, but you just do it. And that is how you become emotionally intelligent, is
Yeah.
by facing the darkness. And I really hadn't been tested all that much, or when I did test it, I failed. But
Mhm.
when I decided to step outside of my comfort zone and really just go through that reckoning stuff, life changes. And I
Yeah.
think dark tourism is a way to change your perspective pretty quick. But also, like, it's I would call it like that, like the astronauts, they have this overview effect when they look down and they see how small they are in the world and the universe.
Yes.
And psychedelics, I think, probably fall within that saying, go down and get that ayahuasca down in South America. Or there's certain the serious illness, the death of a loved one.
Yeah.
Those are the things that really can change your perspective.
Mhm.
um, and as long as you are willing to step outside of your comfort zone, like, life gets better and you can become a more emotionally intelligent.
I agree, and well said. Comfort zones, I think, are our own cages,
Well,
right? And
comfort
so
zones are for
get out of
couch
them.
potatoes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
That's our time for today. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining me. This has been absolutely lovely. If you have questions, suggestions, or think you have a story to add and want to be on the podcast, send us an email or DM us. Our email address is ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com, and do all the things to support the pod. Follow, share, rate, review. We will catch you next time. That's a wrap.